Hello dear friends, how are you all doing today? I'm fine and I'm ready to get started with making some collage papers. I felt this is a lovely way just to spend an afternoon or an evening or a morning just playing around, no stress, no pressure, just creating some lovely background papers that you can use either for making junk journals or cards, mixed media projects, collage, whatever your fancy might take you. So I'm going to start by working with some crayons. I might not use colors, just depending on what I think. I'm definitely going to use a white crayon, and these are wax crayons. I have a selection of stencils. The white ones I bought. This one was just a piece of card where I've punched out circles from one of those paint swatches. So I'm going to use that as a medium for shapes. And then I cut these green stencils just using plastic and a pair of very fine pointed little scissors. So I'm going to see which ones I want to do with that. I am going to be limiting my color palette, so I'm going to be using mostly distress spray stains. I have got mixed up in here a little bit of my faded jeans, but I mixed it with some white acrylic paint, added some water, and in this bottle I've got a little metal ball bearing. So if I move that around, you can hear it in there, and that's what keeps the paints mixed together. You will find if your paints have been sitting for a while that you might pick up sediment. I shook this earlier this morning and you can see already the white is starting to settle, and that's just simply because some pigments are quite heavy. You'll often notice at the bottom of a bottle, so you need to shake those before you get started. But essentially I'm going to use faded jeans, my mixed blue, speckled eggs, salvage patina, and I may or may not use the Delusions shimmer spray. I'm not sure at this stage yet, but if I do, it'll be something I use at the end. And then I have a little spritz bottle for water. I've also taken some A4 just white copy paper, and I've cut that in half, and I'm going to be using this to work on today. So this is the first part of a series of videos that I'm going to be doing. They probably won't be that long each video, but it'll be a series of video using all kinds of different techniques to make your own collage papers. So I'm going to start off by explaining that I'm going to be working with my paper in 3 different color waves. So I'm going to have some that are fairly dark, some that are of medium value, and some that are light. And I also want some that are almost plain, but maybe with a little bit of background pattern, and I want some that actually where the pattern is quite pronounced. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to peel the paper off this wax crayon so that I've got the whole length of the crayon that I can actually use. And it's not always easy to get a white wax crayon, but this is a Faber-Castell one, and I'm sure if you go online you'd be able to find it. Otherwise you just raid any school child's box. They probably don't use white a lot because generally they're colouring in on white paper, so you might be lucky and be able to score some. So I'm going to start off by just using this first little stencil that I made, and this one was just, it's actually very soft, thin, very thin card, probably only about 130 grams. I'm going to put this underneath my piece of paper, and I don't know if you can't really see it through the light unless I'm holding it, but you can see that there are little shadows there where the cut out pieces are. So I'm going to now use my crayon and rub over that, hoping to get some nice circular patterns. I want to make sure that my crayon, even if it's not a solid color in the circle, actually goes to all sides, because I don't want to suddenly find that I've got a cut out or half a shape there. Then I'm going to use my finger just to mark where it was and move the stencil down, and I'm going to do the same thing until I've got to the end of the paper. This is a lovely way to unwind, and also if you find that you have reached one of those sort of impasse moments in your creativity where you just feel blocked and nothing seems to be coming, this is a nice way to loosen up. It's not important whether they are all perfectly in line. It's not important whether the designs are also of equal size, equal strength. It's just going to be what it's going to be. Right, so I'm going to remove that, and If I tilt the paper ever so slightly, you will be able to see that the wax is slightly shiny. So let's see what happens with the magic. Now I have underneath here a silicone mat. This is just a silicone baking mat that I bought at a baking shop in South Africa, but you could also use one of those Ranger craft mats. They look the same and they're nice because you can wipe things down quite easily. I'm going to start off with a little bit of water, because if I was to use my colors straight on here, it would give me a very, very strong color. And I want the water just to be able to dilute the paints ever so slightly so that they spread a little bit. I'm going to start off with my dark ones, give it a bit of a shake. I'm not going to spray too closely to it because I want it just to splatter on here. That's it. And then I'm going to not use the one with the white at the moment, but I'm going to use some speckled egg. Look how nicely here the colors are starting to break out a little bit, almost like frost forming on the grass. And I'm going to just spritz a little bit of my speckled egg, going right to the edges of the paper, because that is something when things don't mess, and then you suddenly find that you actually don't have color all the way to the edge. And now I'm going to use my salvage patina, so working within that same sort of color palette. Now, the interesting thing that you'll notice here is that the color that I'm putting on last, which is the salvage patina, is the color that is most dominant. So these other colors like the faded jeans and the speckled egg aren't as strong once I put the salvage patina on. So just bear that in mind when you're layering your colors. There we go. Now you've got two options here. You could either leave this to dry just completely as it is flat, that's absolutely fine, or you could do what I'm going to be doing now, is to actually take a second piece of paper and starting on the one side, just to gently roll it over this to blot up some of that ink. Rub my hands over the surface and you'll see that the paper is becoming wet and is slightly translucent, and I'll have two shades of paper with the same sort of color palette but looking very different. By doing this, you can see here that it has accentuated where we've done the stencil design, and the second one has just got the most glorious background colors. Isn't that gorgeous? So I'm going to set this aside. I have here on my left hand side, I've got a piece of plastic which I've laid down. I'm just going to put these down quickly. And I'm not worried about that on the paint splatters on here. That's absolutely fine. If it's something that worries you, you can wipe it clean each time. For today, I'm not going to bother with that. So I'm going to take a second piece of card and I'm going to use a different design. I think I quite fancy this one because it's got quite a lot of interest in here. It's got these sort of stringy patterns and also the bubbles. I can quite put this on the other side, silly girl. I can quite see this being used in a sort of nice sort of C shape journal, and because this is quite a big stencil, you'll notice that I'm using just the flat edge of the crayon to drag over the surface. It's picking up the shine and the shimmer of the actual wax, and the harder you go over it and the more you go over it, the stronger the design will be. So are you able to see that if I tilt the paper a little bit? You can see we've got some color. So let's do the same thing here. I'm going to spritz the paper with a little bit of water. And when you work with colors in the same palette, you will find that you have such a harmonious finish to your work that you're able to use these papers all together, where if you start to mix different colors with each sort of piece of paper that you do, you'll find that you can't always work them together. But by carrying the one color across to the next page, you'll find that it's okay, even if you had to just use one of these colors with something else. So now you'll see I've reversed the order. I started off with the salvage patina, then the speckled egg, and lastly I put on the faded jeans, and that is looking slightly different. So I'm going to pick up my clean piece of paper and just press that down gently, allowing the paint to soak in. I love this part. It's a child in me just coming out just to be able to see what happens. Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And how beautifully that has come up with the crayon design underneath. Right, let's set this aside and do the next one. So now I think I've got a stencil here that's got a little bit of a pattern on it that looks a bit like woven netting or fish net of some sort, and I'm going to try this one and just see how this turns out. It's not quite long enough for the page, so I think I'm just going to do this in 2 sections. Again, I'm using the side of my crayon, so anything that actually has a raised surface that's hard enough for you to press against can actually be used for this crayon resist technique. And I'm just going to turn my page this way and do the other side. I know there might be a bit of an overlap in the center, but I'm not worried about that, because in all honesty this will probably be cut up or have some things put on top of it. Right, so let's put that one down, give it a spritz of water, and for this one let's start with speckled egg. Quite liking what's happening here. Then I'm going to take my faded jeans. I'm going to add in a bit of my mixed blue. So this has got a bit of white in it, so it's going to give it a more pastel tone. And even though the blue looks slightly different, it will actually work with the other colors because of the 2 colors that I have that are in the other papers. Just want to make sure that your paper is flat so that you can lift this print. Blot it up. Waste not, want not, but I mean these lovely soft colors are just beautiful. Right. You could do this on card. You could also do this on things like lined paper or graph paper, depending on what you're making your collage papers for. Oh, wow, that is gorgeous. Look at those 2 together. Isn't that fabulous? Right, this one's quite wet, so I'm going to use 2 hands to transfer this quickly. And then we will start the next one. So for this next design I'm going to do, I have a stencil here that has some text, and I'm going to use this just to see how it turns out. I haven't practiced and haven't done a whole lot of this before to see how it works out. It's as much of a surprise for me as it will be for you. Oops, picked up a bit of the ink on my crayon, but that's all right. There's a little bit of an edge here that hasn't had anything on it, so I think I'm going to just do that. Right, for those of you that are very neat people, you would not be happy that I've got streaks on my paper already, but in all reality I'm probably not going to see that in the finished product. So I'm going to start off with this mixed blue to begin with. The nozzle's a bit clogged there, and I'm just going to do light misting of the faded jeans, and then I'm going to go in with the salvage patina, and I'm not going to use the speckled egg at all. Right, so that's nice and covered, and we're going to just blot this up quickly. Brilliant. I love this. When you look at this one, look at how nicely all that fine detail has picked up with that rubbing. So where you're working on something where you want a lovely background that's not too intrusive, This is a really lovely technique to use. I'm going to do just one more with you, and I've got a nice stencil that I made. I'm going to do that one. And I will wipe this up quickly so that I don't get my sleeves in it. That's the only reason. Right, so I have a stencil here that I made. It's got quite big, bold circle patterns. And I'm just going to put this down, and I'm not going to worry that there's a border around the edges. I'm just going to go for it. This plastic that the green stencils have been made out of is slightly thicker than the white, so I'm probably likely to get stronger marks, and we'll just see. We'll be able to compare them nicely when they dry. That should do it. I don't know if you can see that there. Right, little quick spritz of water. And let's just do, I think I'm just going to do speckled egg and the salvage patina. I don't know, I could change my mind. Let's just see. Yeah, I think it does need a little bit of dark in there, ever so little. Right, let's do the blot up. I'm going to, once I've done this one, set these aside, leave them to dry, and then I'll come and show you what they look like once they're all dry. Oh, look how nice that is. Beautiful. I'm not too sure that I like all of that going on in the middle, so I think what I'm going to do is just to put this one to dry, and then I might mop up some of this that's on the table. I'm just going to flip this over in this section, pick up some of that ink, yep, and a little bit in the corner. And where else am I not happy with that corner? And maybe along that edge. There we go. Beautiful, beautiful colors. The paper does get quite translucent while it's wet, and when it dries it's going to be much whiter, so the colors should show up a little stronger. So let's be patient, let this dry, and we'll have a chat when it's done. I'm absolutely loving how these papers have turned out, and you'll see how fine the detail is in the background, but because the colors are mostly softer, they are just delicate there. But where we have stronger colors in the background, obviously you can make the designs more pronounced. The ones that we did with the paint swatches, you'll see that that's a bolder design because it's a bigger space between the gaps, as is this one with the stencil that I made with the green plastic. And then we go on to another commercially made stencil with lots of very fine detail. So I'll take some pictures of these all separately, just with their pairings with the stencil design and with the background color, so that you can have a look. Don't forget to subscribe because there'll be more coming your way. Bye.